Yeah. I heard, but you know that she did. Yes.
Good evening. Hi, Tony. Good evening. It is Tuesday, March 12th, 2024, 5:33. And this is our weekly regular Finance Committee meeting as we work through the budget. We will call the meeting to order, beginning over to my left.
For board members.
For board members,
Molly Rogers.
Christopher Wall,
Becky Fless,
Tony B, Jeff Hanley.
Joanne O'Brien.
So I apologize, I meant for
Oh.
finance committee members. Because not every board member here is a finance committee member, so only finance committee members can like take action if there's
If
action,
you are,
so that's my apology.
if you're a Finance Committee member, would you please raise your hand for the public?
Thank you. My apologies.
There we go.
Thank
So
you.
these other folks that are here just want to help us spend our money really, really well. So I appreciate you coming. Administrative staff who are here for the same reason.
Pat Hopkins, Superintendent.
Andrea Dish, Business Manager.
Alicia Morris, Director of Special Services.
Terry McGuire, Director of Technology.
Sarah Sims, Principal at Gardner Regional Middle.
Tiffany Cockrell, Principal at Pittston Randolph Consolidated School. Vicky Duguay, Principal at Riverview Community School.
Lauren Arnold, Principal at Gardner Area High School.
Katie Gould, Principal at Helen Thompson School.
Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum.
Gabe Dostey, Director of Operations.
We have a couple administrators who could not be here. One is ill. There was another commitment they couldn't get out of it. And just so you know, we do have one administrator who has to leave by 6:30 tonight. So if that person gets up, that's.
And we have one board member that will be here any moment.
Okay, all right, great,
Stuck on the bridge.
great.
Wait
Thank
till
you.
summer.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've had a request from Andrea that we go backwards in the agenda. So we'll start with C with the RFQ update.
all right, so Gabe is going to distribute some information to you. We have, we released our RFQs. Remember, there were two of them. One for the energy efficiency. We received qualifications back for two companies. And then for the engineering architectural firms that would come in and do a complete analysis of all of our buildings and prepare us for new construction applications. And we received 3. So Gabe has some of that paperwork.
So looking through it, each of the packets is anywhere from 30 to 70 pages long for each of the RFQs that we received. So I wasn't sure I didn't know if you wanted some everybody or I can share it electronically. It probably would be better.
You can share electronically with folks who want it, but here's what I would actually recommend that we do. Gabe and I have set aside Friday, March 29th to interview because there were only 2 companies who've submitted for energy efficiency and only 3 that submitted for the architectural engineering firm. We feel like we should interview all of them. And so we've set up interviews for the 29th, and I'm looking to the finance committee to see if maybe there's 1 or 2 finance committee members who are available and would be able to join us for those interviews.
What time on the 29th?
I just have the day set aside. If there are
Okay.
5, we need to determine the length of time. We want to give them, if it's an hour each, we're talking 5 hours roughly. So it would depend what time we start. Maybe we have a little bit of a lunch break, so.
Yeah, it says we need at least 1 member from
From the board,
the
yeah.
board to be on this committee.
I'm willing to do it unless somebody else has a burning desire to.
I'll come.
You'll do it? Great. Jeff, you can be our guy.
Okay, and we can have 2.
Yeah,
You know,
2,
if
I
it's
mean,
just the 2 of us, it'd be great to have 2, so if you
yeah,
both
okay.
want to do it.
If the more, the better, 2 I feel would be even better.
Yep,
And
perfect.
so what I'll do, I'll share the packets with both of you and
Yep.
Mhm.
and then we can. And what I'll do is I have to notify the companies this Friday, by this Friday, that we will be interviewing them. And at that time, I will let them know that we are setting the 29th and we need to set some times. So that is the day. And yes, we'll interview all of them and run through it. I'm working right now on a list of questions for each, which Andrew was nice enough to reach out to our attorney. And they gave us some kind of base questions to go by, and we'll start with that. I look back through what Andrew has done before in the past for performance contracting, and there were some questions that are on there, so I think we just need to grab a couple from each and go through it.
You just need to remember that you need to stick to the questions and that you can't deviate from asking other questions to some and not to others. So
Yep,
just
so
make
we'll-
sure that everyone's on.
Yep, we'll stick with the form and right in there it says we cannot talk about cost and budget at that time. So it's very specific, the sort of questions that we are to ask. So we basically will run down the script with each firm at the time.
Right.
Yep.
What time of the day are we gonna try for?
I'm thinking we might start at 9.
Good.
That way that gives people a little bit of a chance to get here and not do it too early. And if we do it for 5 hours, we'll probably take a bit of a break for lunch. So maybe a half hour for lunch and maybe we can get something and bring it in.
Yeah, I have another issue at 3:00, so that.
Okay, we should be out by then. Yep.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, sounds good.
Slow.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Gabe.
Alyssa texted me, she is not on finance, but she would be happy to read and just see what's in there, if that would be helpful in any way, as just another set of eyes. So
Great.
share with her.
Thank you.
And I neglected to tell you that Megan is not able to be here tonight. She is on finance. She texted me. Childcare.
Thank you.
Okay. Next.
So as a reminder, from our last meeting, we were waiting for receipt of the Davis-Bacon federal paperwork for those contractors who worked on Easter in order for our audit to be submitted. Shortly after that, Gabe was provided some of that paperwork, for which I forwarded to the auditor. On Saturday, he released our audit to the state. You all have a copy of the audit as he sent to the state. I am happy to announce there are no deficiencies, there are no findings, and there are no comments. So I'm very pleased about that. We discussed in the last finance meeting, the issue that was holding up the audits was the Bacon-Davis calculations for people working on federal grants. I discussed with you at that time that moving forward, we will not be paying any invoices that do not have Bacon-Davis compliance docs. So in order for these companies to be paid, they will need to submit it with their invoice. Strangely enough, when Gabe reached out to one of the companies, and it was one of the companies who said that they knew how to prepare the documents, they said that the state had asked them to do so, but that the state had never required them to provide Bacon-Davis. So it's strange that the state has never collected it, but moving forward, I intend to collect all of it so that we are never in the same situation again. Questions regarding?
The only question that I have, Andrea, is we've always been told in the past that part of the state federal requirements is that the auditor do a presentation to the full board. Have you discussed that with the auditor, and when are you looking to have that done?
I have not discussed it with him. This year, we are much later than we usually are with the audit. Usually that's being done in October and November. I know that he's very busy, but I will reach out to Peter or Hank to see if one or the other will discuss the findings of or not the findings, the audit itself.
Another question?
Sure.
I'm not sure if you can answer this today or not, but at the last finance committee meeting, we discussed carry forward a bit. And can you tell us how much money we had remaining at the end of last year?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. It needs to be adjusted based on accrued salaries, and then again for the amount that we're applying towards this budget. So we can talk about, on our next agenda, I will put a conversation regarding carry forward, and we can have that conversation in depth. So we can remind everyone of the conversation that we had last year about carry forward.
That would be great, and then give us an updated, yeah, perfect, thank you.
Absolutely.
The
Appreciate it.
benefits and the pitfalls.
Yeah,
We really need to focus on that.
yeah.
Oh, and you had a
I
question.
just wanted to, two things. One, just to double check on the Bacon Davis stuff, right? I think I'd heard, we talked about not only contractors, but subcontractors were the issue from before. And this will clean up, just kind of checking everybody will clean up the subcontractors as well.
So the invoices for some subcontractors are usually sent to the contractors, so it will be the contractor's responsibility when they provide their invoice to us to have all of their compliance documents as well as compliance documents for any subcontractors.
Okay, just, yeah, mindful of how much chasing we might have to do, but that should clean that up. Cool. And just to echo what Alyssa had said, I think earlier, just thanks for your guidance on that. And
It is a team effort upstairs. I just want you to know, it's just not the Andrea show. So I appreciate all of them. And as I said in my email to you, I appreciate your support, so.
Well, when the audit showed up in the email, it was like a fireworks moment. So I thought, Andrea must be exhaling.
yeah.
So I'm very
Andrea's been
happy.
boiling, so yes, it was a huge aha moment about that, so.
Yay.
Catch me once.
All righty. So, the 2024 requested budget.
Requested budget. So, as I mentioned the last time that we met, we've been holding meetings behind the scenes, administrators, myself, Andrea, really looking long and hard at the budget to see where there were places that we could reduce the budget. That work is not complete, okay? So I want to be really clear that I haven't had a chance to meet with every individual person. And we need to go back and spend a little more time with special ed. And I am in the process right now of scheduling a number of back-to-back meetings next Wednesday. Our schedules are all pretty tight, so I have a window on Wednesday and we'll meet. However, what you're going to look at today, I'm going to have Andrea kind of walk through, is I've met with Gabe. We've gone through his budget pretty extensively to see where we could make some reductions. I've met with Lauren at the high school. Keep in mind that with the high school, it's a work in progress. We're still waiting for student signups, really looking at courses for next year, whether class sizes, that's a process. So we're still working on it. So that's not 100% complete. Met with special ed, we've made some changes, met today with Terry, have made some changes. So I will hand it over to Andrea, if you would give them all an update about what you've done and where we currently stand.
Terry, I'm going to attempt to screen share.
You are screen sharing,
Okay.
so if you just pick a tab, that would be great.
All I see is myself in the window and I don't see what's on my screen.
That's the increase. Yeah,
Better?
I was just checking the math. Math is not
I'll
wrong.
shut that screen.
It's terrible.
No, I can see the board. I can see the board.
So hopefully it was just like,
Quit sharing in the chair again.
oh, and
Absolutely.
if you look where we were.
Yes.
God.
How's that?
It says I'm screen sharing, but,
Okay. You can see,
oh,
The
thank you.
agenda.
Sorry, that's good. So, my apologies. It's why I don't usually like to screen share. Okay. So what you see in front of you is the updated expenditure articles. The way the budget, the way it currently stands is up approximately 3.8 billion or 12.64%. And you see the changes to each of the cost centers as we are required to report by the Department of Ed when we go out to vote. So that is where things currently stand. Also in your packet, you will see an increase overview updated. So what I tried to do is to jump off the document the last time. You received it on February 27th, and I've created a new column called Budget Changes. So the things that you see in cobalt blue are increases since the last time that we met. So you can see from my document that we added the restructure of the Director of Operations position. And that is a change to the budget, an increase to the budget in the amount of $10,915. And that's just a salary increase. So it doesn't include taxes. So just to be clear. The next increase that to the budget is the increase of 75 cents per hour to the head custodians of the elementary schools and the high school and middle school, as well as the maintenance position. As you remember, there was a discussion with the board regarding the loss of wages from the changes that we made to building checks, and as a result, it was there was a memorandum of understanding that was signed with the CBA of the custodial committee that increased their wages 75 cents an hour for every hour for this year and for next year. Unfortunately, I did not have a copy of that MOU, and it was not included with the original budget, but I have since made that change, and that's the reflection. The next item that you see, the change, is the Tier 3 behavioral support. You will see that I have listed $76,000, $76,562 for salaries. But this position was, including salaries and benefits, was $97,941, and that has been a cut that we have made to the budget. The next increase that you see is an instructional coach transfer from ESER that was not included in the original budget as the position was unfilled. We have not had that position filled in ESER because it was unfilled, it wasn't transferred in, but after discussion, it has been moved into the budget. And that position, salaries and benefits, is $107,000. The next change to the budget was the conversation regarding the assistant athletic director or support for the athletic director. Basically, it was somebody to help cover games. There are a lot of games going on, and the athletic director has requested support. I originally put in not knowing what that would look like. As a result of conversation, that was cut by $27,000 to $3,000. The next change that we made to the budget was the community funding project. For those of you at that finance committee meeting, we had agreed to put $530,000 in this year's budget as a match in the event that we received the community funding project approved by the federal government. Pat had conversation with Jared Golden's office, and most likely that money would not be required in the next fiscal year. So we removed that from this budget, but that conversation is to be continued. The next projects that you see in red are part of a reduction to the 5-year capital improvement project. So you see in the budget, Gabe's increase over this year to capital improvement projects was $449,600. As a result of conversation, we have removed the following projects. The catwalk replacement at the high school, that was a cut of $280,000. Door replacements, there were 3 doors in the budget for a total of $30,000. We removed 2 of the door replacements.
There's 60,000. There's 3 at Riverview, I believe, and 3 at LER, and we removed 1 from each building. Is that correct? Yeah.
It is, it's a reduction of $20,000.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. I only cut it from one, so gotcha. Playground enlargements, there was a request for a playground enlargement, I believe at LAR. That, as a result of conversation, has been cut. There was key fobs budgeted throughout the district at $4,000 per school. Basically, the key fob would allow organizations using our gyms to access our gyms without being given keys. That cost was about $4,000 per school, and we've removed that from all 4 of the elementary schools for a cut of $16,000. The next item that was removed is the gym floor replacement at Riverview. That is a cut of $30,000. Sorry. The next item that we removed from the budget was another siding replacement project at Helen Thompson for $30,000. It seems like we always have more siding to replace at Helen Thompson. This is the last of the siding, and we have decided that we could move that to another year. So that was cut. In the budget, there was also fence replacement for Hope Field, budgeted for $20,000 as a result of conversation. That was also cut from the budget. The next item that you see, the next cut, was for professional development at Gardner Area High School. I originally told you that I had put in $10,000. I had actually put in $25,000, and all $25,000 has since been cut. There have been conversations that professional development monies for the high school can be found elsewhere. The next bunch of cuts. So when I originally gave this document to you, it didn't actually total all of the cuts. I need to take a sip before I. Sorry. I had just gone through and just picked up major things. So on this document, you see miscellaneous increases. That is the difference between the cuts that I originally listed for you and the actual increase. And it's everywhere. It's not big things. It's just a lot of little things adding up to, honestly, a pretty big number, 370,000. So now when you look at the bottom of that column, you will see that that column totals the original increase as provided to you on February 27th, I think was the date. So moving on with other cuts, these are a result of additional conversations. So there was offsite academic testing at the high school. We occasionally would rent the Augusta Civic Center to conduct testing. That cut was made in the amount of $500. After conversation, $1,000 was cut from postage at the high school. Purchase services, basketball security at the high school, Nate had increased that. We reduced that again by the amount it had increased. That's a budget cut of $2,520. There were miscellaneous supplies at the high school, a lot of little things adding up to $3,677. There was a field trip requested at the high school in the amount of $900. As a reminder, the board in past years agreed not to fund field trips. As a reminder, elementary schools that take field trips, those field trips are reimbursed to us by their parent-teacher groups. So we currently do not have field trips in our budget. So as a result, this field trip was removed. The next item was in the athletic budget. There were padded game chairs and a rack totaling $7,705. That was removed. Another request from athletics was a Bose sound system in the amount of $2,000. That has been removed. There were 4 special purpose private school placements. Those are special ed placements for students out of school. So you see 4 of them. One to the main school solutions for $67,900, one to the Children's Center for $60,200, and then 2 other individual placements to John Murphy Homes in the amount of $75,120 each. As a reminder, those again are an individual placement for 4 children, just that you're aware. After discussion with Alicia, we removed some of the special ed transliteration services and teacher of the deaf monies. It is not a teaching position, but it was money put in the budget to support transliteration services. That was a cut of $100,000. After conversation regarding the transportation budget, we decided to cut $500 from turnpike tolls. After conversation with Terry today, we removed $3,042 in miscellaneous technology supplies, and also from her budget, Apogee Rooms, the software and implementation, totaling $24,775 was removed. In addition, I made another addition to the budget that I did not put in blue. I updated the special purpose private school tuition based on the daily tuition rate that we received from the state. The state sets daily tuition rates for all of these special purpose private schools. And I received a copy and I updated the remaining tuition for those schools as indicated. So the total budget cuts are as indicated, totaling $1,324,000 and change. So now, if you subtract that amount from the original increase of $5,128,557, you see the current budget increase of $3,804,424. Questions?
Sorry, it just popped out at me. I'm sorry, I didn't think of this earlier when you and I met. What about transportation for the out-of-district placements? We usually budget additional money for transportation.
That is in the budget still.
Okay, so we can take a look at that. That may be.
Yep, it was in Gabe's and Alicia's budget. I
Okay.
think we talked about it.
Right.
But I believe there's $102,000 as far for transportation of special ed students out of the district. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we'll take a look at
Jack?
that.
How did we manage to remove 4 special purpose placements from the budget? We just updated numbers of kids or?
Anticipated, right? Some of it is potentially having, historically, we've tried to keep a couple extra in the budget just in case, because you can have families move in any moment. And what we did is we kind of followed the same model that we followed last year. And that is that we already have a special fund that was developed, approved by the board a few years ago.
The reserve fund.
The reserve fund, there's $300,000 in there.
And we
right?
have not tapped into any of that reserve fund. So knowing that we had that, Jack, we decided it would be safe to cut some of these anticipated.
So that's the funds available to go forward for this year.
It is funds tapped specifically for special ed. Yes, yep. Other questions regarding?
I have a little question. Where would we need padded chairs?
This actually
not being
stems,
picky.
no,
I just don't
this
understand.
actually completely stems from me. Okay, and it stems from me because last year before, I attended basketball games somewhere else, some basketball games in a different school district, and they had these padded chairs for their players. And it had like, for us, it would have tigers on the back, and it was just really nice, you know, and I was like, oh, wouldn't that be nice? That's where it stemmed from. I thought it would be nice. We can't afford it. It would be great. And in my mind, I was more thinking fundraise for it, boosters, that type of thing.
What do they sit on now?
They sit on,
On the bleachers.
on the bleachers
Or
or there are
folding
metal
chairs.
chairs.
I was gonna say, if we're stenciling a couple crafty kids and some Krylon, we could definitely dress up the folding chairs.
You know,
So-
that might be a thing where
It was
parents,
just a thought,
it's a
but
great thought. I just didn't understand and parents might just love to hop on that idea.
Especially
Um,
graduating athletes, they might want to buy a chair.
Yeah.
yeah.
Their family.
And that was it. You could have, the way some of it was done, is that you could have a local business sponsor a chair so they could have their logo on it. So they got that advertisement.
Definitely worth pursuing.
It was just an idea,
Yeah.
not worth it in this budget.
But
One more, a Bose sound system.
They just need a new sound system at, in
They needed
the
a portable sound system, I think it had something to do with the games. Jerry, did?
Oh, for the turf field?
They
want them,
Again, for like music,
for warm-up music,
they want
Sure.
portable
Yeah, yeah.
We're looking
That
at
sound system.
alternative options.
I'm not opposed to it. I was thinking
Yes,
Bose for
please.
$2,000. That's a pretty,
We might have
yeah, anyway, okay, just checking. Thank you.
So the next document that I share with you is the document that I always share with you, which is the worksheet. Let me just show it. So the only thing that has changed is the bottom section. Well, actually, the side has changed because I changed the requested budget. So those figures down the right-hand side have changed as a result of the cuts. So based on the budget as it currently stands, there is an increase to the 4 locals municipalities in the amount of 3.4 million or 27.96% overall.
I know, sticker shock, but woo-hoo, we went from 38.75 down to 27.96. So that's good news. There's more work to be done, obviously, but we're definitely heading in the right direction. I am absolutely concerned about where we're gonna go though, and how far we're going to get. I've never seen an increase this large. And so that is something that we're all gonna have to grapple with. And once we're done analyzing everything that's in the budget and we're as low as we can go, then what do? How do we proceed? You know, we are looking at everything, right? Everything's kind of on the table at this point as best it can be. But it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough to get that down below where it was last year. What I thought would be helpful, kind of based upon conversations that you and I have had, Becky, I thought it would be helpful for board members and maybe members of the public to get a better sense of why some of the items that are here are being proposed. I understand that most will have to be reduced, right? We're just not going to be able to afford many of them. But there's a reason for it. It's not just a wish list. It's really thinking about the needs of our students in the building, what our staff, what they need, our administrators to be able to appropriately respond to the increasing needs of our student body, right? So I thought that would be helpful for one. And then 2, just kind of highlight again some of the areas that we still have to look at. So we're doing registration, so we're going to have to be paying attention to student registration, looking at class sizes. We have received a little more direction from Maine School Management regarding the Maine paid family leave. So we may be able to look at some reduction there potentially. Andrea is working with Competitive Energy to be going out to bid for fuel and potentially natural gas and electricity so that we'll have a better sense of what those costs are going to be. Health insurance is not till the end of the month where we get a cap. And it's not until April before we know what our share is, but there's the potential of a large savings there. Can you remind me any other big areas that I'm forgetting that we're looking long and hard at?
I think that the other one of the large increases was the property and casualty, but I don't expect that to come in until after the budget's set. As a reminder, we're going out to bid for property and casualty this year, so that is not a cut we'd be able to take, although I don't anticipate a cut.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
Water and sewer was an expected increase that we.
Water sewer, I received communication from the city of Gardner regarding our water and sewer rates going up. I believe one is going up by 15% and the other is going up by 20%. So that is reflective.
30, I think, isn't it 30%?
Don't quote me on the rates. I thought it was 15 and 20, and it might be different for residential than
Oh, yeah. Yep.
commercial. So, but yes, I budgeted an increase based on the communication that was received. I apologize for not having that exact percentage.
Does the bus lease increase every year,
Mhm.
or is that like an additional cost?
So as a reminder, our buses are not owned by the district and we do not have any obligation. We do not do any of the maintenance or repairs. So as the buses age, they obviously need tires and things need to be changed. So that is the reason why the per mileage rate. So every time our wheels go around, that's how we're charged. So that is the basis for the increase every year, the aging of the buses and the need for additional repairs and maintenance. Honestly, compared to other districts, I think our maintenance, transportation costs, our annual costs, I think I talked about this during the AG 279, how we get the lesser of, or the lesser of are either our expenditures or a calculation that the state did years ago based on the number of miles traveled throughout the district. And we always get based on our expenditures, which is the least. So I think we're pretty thrifty. Leasing buses, we don't have to employ a mechanic. We don't have to own a garage. We don't have to stock tires or any of the things that we would need to replace, to repair buses. So I think this is the best of both worlds. I also think that our buses are much newer than a lot of the districts who own their buses. So anyway.
And so we have a 5-year lease. When is our lease?
This is the first year of the first year?
Yeah,
The first
this
of
was the first, this will
year.
complete the
Yeah.
first year.
For this year, the year that we're in is the first year.
Questions, or what do we think about kind of folding in administration to kind of talk about some of the needs? That sound,
Traditionally, in years past, we've tried to come in at 3%. I just want to say that's not possible. That's like impossible. It'll be, I'll be stunned if we can get it to single digits, period. I think it's gonna need to be double digits somehow in order to meet the needs.
Wasn't it something, was it Alan said last year, like 3% isn't even keeping up with the increase in cost of living at this
That's
point?
correct.
yeah.
So I think.
But that's what we always said, sort of, that was our ace in the hole, but
Right.
there's just no possible way we can do that because we have all the, even with declining enrollment, and I think that's maybe something that we don't have declining enrollment in all the right places. And it never coordinates perfectly.
But some of it is a declining enrollment, but an increase in student needs, right?
Absolutely,
They're very, very different.
very different,
And
absolutely.
there has been, over the last 2 years, double-digit increases in the state valuation. And they've ranged from, Randolph is 12% up to West Gardner, that's 17%
Right.
over 2 years. So that means that there's been a considerable shift as a result in the cost being passed on to taxpayers. That in order for us to receive our state dollars, it means taxpayers have to pick up more. And to have such a large increase in valuation over 2 years is partly a driving factor here as well.
Just as a reminder, the ED 279 is based on the state valuation of these 4 towns. The valuation that sets the mill rate I would doubt would be as high as the state valuation. So it takes more mills to raise the kind of money that the state valuation would raise if that's what their property values were at. Does that make sense? That
It makes sense
there's
'cause
a
I've heard it forever.
disconnect between the state valuation and what the valuations, each of the these communities value themselves.
I wish that there was a way to draw it out on a whiteboard, Stalcon style, so that people could understand what that is and what it looks like, because your state valuation and I mean, we can all say that since the pandemic, since 2019, many of our properties have doubled in value. And that but that doesn't come without cost. And to understand, and to understand that piece of it, and then to understand what the state does, they're not the same thing.
And the other thing that I'm going to say is that there is a disconnect between the value of somebody's home and the ability of somebody to pay taxes. And while somebody's valuation may increase because the properties in Maine are selling, it does not necessarily translate that this person has additional income or the ability to pay.
Right,
So
to meet
there's
that
a
raised,
it's inelastic. It's one, unlike sales tax, you get taxed based on what you spend. If you don't spend, if you don't buy things, you don't pay sales tax. This is not the same way.
It's not the same world.
Is there a way to appeal these evaluations either by the towns themselves or as the district as a whole to appeal to the state, say these are way over? Has anyone ever tried that process?
I have no idea. I mean,
It's a state valuation of the town. So it wouldn't be the district, it would have to be the town, and I have no idea whether anyone has tried to do it.
It would be through Maine Revenue. Maine Revenue is the department that sets valuations, and they're the ones, again, who try to be the great equalizer to ensure that all towns are evaluating their properties equitably.
Right.
So they, if they try to make up for the way that, I don't know, Pittston may value their properties differently. So they try to make things equitable across the state to everyone. So in short, to your answer, I don't know anyone who.
Equitably high.
Mhm.
well,
Well, it's
yes, but equitably high, yes, but not as high as what you could sell your house for. So it's somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I know that. I mean, I dealt with them and they always reminded me of the Wizard of Oz, the guy behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Ignore him, he's not there.
He's not there.
And
but
they
he
come up
is.
with a number, magic
Right.
number.
Right.
I think as homes in Maine continue to be, I don't know the word I want to use. As long as Maine's I mean, people are buying homes here. People are moving from other parts of the country to come and live here. And as long as our housing market is hot, this is unfortunately
Also gentrification. As you have more things like Johnson Hall that attract people with more money, then you're going to have everything kind of ratchet up. And it does make it very hard for the old timers and the people that have lived here for generations to keep up with the change.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
It was, you can.
I was just to respond to that, and it's, the school district plays a role in that, right?
Mhm.
You know, if you want to build up your community, you need to have an attractive school district that is respected, so that people are willing to move to the community, open up businesses. And hopefully that is happening. You know, I hear from other people in the area around, and MSAD11 has a pretty good reputation with the work that we're doing here. But the other thing that I'm seeing is that we're actually having retired families, individuals move here. It's not just all families.
Right.
And part of it is because their family lives here, they live close by. And so we do have a number of properties that are being sold to individuals who are not necessarily connected to the school. So we're not seeing a net result as a result of all those people moving in. We're not seeing the net result of an increased enrollment in the school district entirely.
And there's also a trend that people are having fewer children or not having children at all. So again, there's an age shift in the demographic overall, that there's more people headed toward retirement and in retirement, so that the younger families are
Right.
not earning the money and not able to purchase homes in the same ways that our families were when, in the olden days when.
Quickly, the ED 279, when you went over that with us earlier, there was a piece there that we recognize. I cannot remember exactly, but it had to do with the collecting information from families.
So you're
Yeah, it
talking
had a
about
greater
the
impact
free and
on us.
reduced lunch,
Right.
lunch status and our inability. And yes, if we were, there's an alternative form, and I think that we need to look further into that. Because with the free, I hate saying free lunch, with the lunch paid by the state, there is less chance of parents completing and returning those forms.
It's a lack of information that resulted in a lack of state funding, correct?
I would say we have.
Yep.
We have done that alternative form, so it's not something to look
Right.
into. We have to help provide some stability to those numbers. One of the challenges, in addition to what you were just saying, is that the federal threshold hasn't changed. So as salaries have increased in our area and around the country, the federal threshold hasn't changed. So we're seeing a decline in the number of families who qualify, even though the need still exists.
And as a reminder, during our conversation, the state is exploring, or the Department of Education is exploring additional ways where we can identify high needs other than parents filling out alternative forms or free and reduced. It was discussed getting information directly from revenue, because obviously revenue knows where everyone lives, and it would seem to be a pretty easy way of finding. Anyway, that is an ongoing process, one that I hope that they can move along.
Can I interject a little bit? I don't want to cut off the board's questions, but we're at 6:20, and I know Sarah has to leave early. She has to leave by 6:30. And if we're going to talk about any of these issues or any of these new positions, things like that, I just want to make sure Sarah has an opportunity to share from the middle school's perspective what the needs are and what she's proposed.
I got a question.
For Sarah?
Well, for the positions, I don't know if it's Sarah's or not.
Okay.
Andrea, the one you said that you added in that hasn't been filled, the ESSER instructional coach,
Mhm,
that's still empty?
mhm.
Is it?
There's not an employee in the position,
Right.
but we are using the funds for something else.
So the 107,
Yep.
I actually believe is an employee. It's the 85 that is not currently an employee, I believe. You think maybe it's the other way around. but-
Actually, they're both of them are 107.
Oh, okay.
And I'm only listing for
Gotcha.
one of them, the salaries, and the other one, I listed the entire amount that I brought in that included benefits.
So the position that we haven't filled has been a math instructional coach position. And so we've used the money to contract some services. And we haven't been able to hire anyone because they're one-year positions because it's federal dollars. And so we couldn't make any long-term commitment. So they've been really creative in trying to contract services and get people in here to provide support. It has definitely been a position that we have missed. There's been great need for it.
And
So-
we have interest.
Yeah.
People are knocking on the door, wondering if this is for the next year, and close, because the new market funds.
Yeah.
Higher year. But the big question has always been, is it grant funded for 1 year? Or is there, and what I always say is, no position is guaranteed after 1 year because of our evaluation system. And it depends on performance, but we have not advertised for it because it's in the budget, as you're suggesting. We only have one math coach for the entire district. We have some significant need in that planning.
So can I just shift to Sarah? She has 5 minutes and she has to leave.
I didn't know if that was a Sarah question or not.
Oh, okay.
I-
Well, and it
I didn't know
would
if that
be- it
coach
would
was
have
at the
been-
middle school or.
It would have been, right? I mean, we've shifted our coach up to the middle school as a result, but Sarah.
I don't see anything for Sarah.
So I know one of the things that we're definitely seeing is an extreme need for more mental health support in our building. The need, I think people know that it's out there, but we have in our building, we're very lucky. Currently, we have 2 guidance counselors, we have a special education social worker. We share and split a social worker with the high school, and then we have a spur wing social worker who resides in our building. Every single one of them has a waiting list right now with about 20 people on it, except for our special ed social worker. That's a little different. We don't have enough resources in our building right now to actually meet the needs of our kiddos. Our guidance counselors do sort of a different role. They do meet with kids, but they don't do that sort of social work layer, right? That ongoing sort of counseling, in-depth piece. And so that's just a need that I know we are really seeing in our building, and it is building. It's not going away. I know on the way out the door today, our spur wing counselor said, I got 10 referrals from doctor's offices today for kids who need to see me. She's like, and I don't have any more space. So it's just, the needs are definitely changing. And I think that's one of the things we're seeing. And we know all those layers, some of it's pandemic, some of it's societal. There's just lots of shifts, right? But it's really hard to meet our kids in the classroom if mentally they're not ready to be there because they are still trying to process things. And so for us, that's something we know has to be a focus for us, and that we've looked at some creative ways to maybe exchange a position. And that's on the table. We're open to anything, but we know right now we have to figure out a way to meet that layer of our student needs in order to ensure that they can access their education.
Thank you. Yeah, so it doesn't say middle school specifically,
Right.
but one of the social workers is currently split between the middle school and the high school that is funded through MSAD. And I think ideally, what I'm hearing Sarah say, that ideally she would like to have a full-time social worker versus just half-time because of the growing needs.
But one wouldn't be enough because there's not enough hours in the day.
Well, right now you only have a half, so if you can increase it to full, no, is it
It's
still
still
gonna meet
better
all the
than-
needs,
right,
but it's
the
certainly
half.
moving in the right direction.
Right, and right now I know Meg, even for us, is starting to have to rotate kids on an every other week basis just to fit in seeing all of the kids that really are in need of support. And it's not enough, I mean, it's better than nothing, but
Right.
it's still just not enough. And so just really, we have to be really cognizant of that.
And just as a reminder, it's maybe for new board members or members of the public, so yes, special ed pays for a social worker, so that is working with students with special needs. Then we have this part-time social worker currently that the district pays for. So that is any student that we've identified who needs to do the social worker can do that without charge. Then we have the spur wing counselor, which we have throughout the district. We have multiple spur wing counselors. Those are funded through insurance, family insurance. So they cannot access those individuals unless they do so as a family and using their own insurance. So if we are looking to increase any of our social workers from, say, half-time to full-time, then that is funded by the district and it's free to families. There is no fee for that service. So that's just the different layers that for services that we have
But
available.
also that some of those kids may see providers outside the building.
Mhm.
What they need is that service in the building to help support them in the access, right? What's holding them back from accessing the education. So yes, they may have some supports outside, but that internal support is where that connection is, right? Think about how much time we have kiddos during the day. They need that in that different capacity, not just in that outside capacity. They need that academic layer attached to it.
So our social worker is a clinical social worker.
Yeah.
So is it possible that a student that is working on their clinical social worker degree could be supervised by the one that is there, so that we had an extra set of hands?
I think there's always the layer of looking at people who are doing their internship. There's obviously
that's the word.
rules and
Yes.
layers to
Yep.
it. But there is such a need in our state to
Right.
even hire, and the jobs are so open across the state that a lot of them are doing their internship while working full-time through that internship. So there are a lot of times they're making exceptions that you don't have to do your internship and then get a job. You can do your internship while you're doing the job.
And then you'll never do it again once you're done.
Correct, right, so they're
Because
so they're
it's
making these
overwhelming.
exceptions, so even
right.
finding internships, we're not even seeing that come our way.
But we have had an intern.
Our
in-
Spurwink counselor is a current intern, but our situation at the high school is very similar to what Sarah's expressed in the middle school.
Okay. I was just trying to think of ways to find.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to just piggyback. We have done creative things like that. Does make the supervision piece challenging when
I would
everyone's
think, right.
caseload is exploding and
Right.
you're spread across the district, but definitely open to anything creative
Okay.
that meets the needs that
Okay.
we're seeing. Sorry, Andrea.
Do the Spurwink counselors only service those students who have main care, or are they actually accessing private insurance? I thought it was just main care eligible
They can
students.
access private insurance, although I don't think I could give you a list, but it's specific ones that have to align. And if they access our Spurwink counselor in the building, they cannot access an additional private, because that's a double dipping of insurance. So there's some layers there. So sometimes they might want to access Spurwink but they see a private person as well, and they often won't give up for that. So it's many layers.
And
So I
so,
apologize, but it's my time to
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
okay,
tap out.
well, thank you for helping with the questions. So does Spurwink bill main care?
That would be the mom, they would either bill main care or they would bill somebody's private insurance. Tony,
Or both?
can you share a social worker?
I
Can you shed
am,
light?
yes, and
Oh,
I worked
yes, you are,
in community
sorry.
mental health for
Sorry,
many
yep,
years, so
yep.
for a different agency, but yes, exactly that.
Sorry.
But, I think it traditionally had been if people are conditionally licensed, then they can only bill main care. But if they have their full license, and they can bill any of the insurances that will reimburse that, which would be most of the traditional ones. At Blue Cross, Aetna.
Main community health options.
Yeah,
All those
yeah.
things, right, okay. Oh, Joanne, yes.
What do we do if we have a student in crisis? Where someone has a complete meltdown, or it's not functional at all, or is potentially going to harm themselves at the moment. How do we deal with that mental illness?
There is a crisis team or multiple teams in the state, and we call crisis. And if it's to that level, they will actually send people to the school and do an assessment. And if necessary, to protect the child, they will take the child to a local hospital to be assessed.
There are times too when they'll just call the police.
Depending on the safety to themselves and others, yeah. Because crisis may not immediately be available. Yeah, and we have had police escort a child
Yes, we have.
to the hospital.
Yep.
To get evaluated.
We don't have a school officer anymore right now,
We
too.
do not currently
Correct.
have a
Yep.
school resource officer, correct?
However, that doesn't mean that if we needed one and he was available. It's just that
Right.
he's not in our building all the time
Right.
right now.
Trying to get in schools on his day shift when he's
Yes.
free, but he's really putting a lot of extra time. He's still trying to help.
Okay.
So looking at
thank
the
you.
positions, I
Yep.
guess, we've talked about the need for the kindergarten positions. At the last meeting, I gave you a handout that included anticipated class sizes for our elementary, well, for all of our schools, but we focused on kindergarten. I gave you a different document that outlined how we came up with some projections for class size based on the number of students who are already enrolled in pre-K and historically, how many students we've had in pre-K versus how many we've had in kindergarten. So there's always a gap. There's always some that their families don't send them to pre-K. So based on those numbers, if we do not add kindergarten teacher at Pittston and at Helen Thompson, we could potentially be looking at class sizes of 2021, which is just too large. I mean, for Pittston Randolph, they have the smallest classrooms in the entire district, right? And so it is impossible. And as we talk about the increasing needs, it starts in kindergarten. And we already know, ladies, I would look to Katie and Tiffany. I think already we're anticipating 40-ish students from CDS to be coming in. Is that a correct number?
Yeah, so we know of, 40-ish right now across the district, but that will certainly probably increase within the next couple of months. That's really high from where we've been in the past.
Yeah, that's really high. So we think about the needs in the classroom and what that looks like for students, what that looks like for staff. And we really feel like we have to have another teacher in both of those grades. Now that will bring your class sizes down to 13, 14, which is a bit low, but at the same time, if we have just 2 students who are struggling to adapt to the rules and how kindergarten operates, that can create quite havoc in a classroom. Now, we currently have at LER, there are 4 kindergarten teachers. Class sizes at the present time are anticipated to be 18, 19 there. So, I'm sorry. With only 3 teachers, they're expected to be 18 or 19, sorry. So we have a 4th teacher who this year was reassigned somewhere else because the class sizes didn't warrant 4. But we're really feeling like that teacher needs to come back. Again, it would bring our class sizes down a little bit lower than policy, but your policy says that your class size target for kindergarten is 16. So now you can go as high as 18, but given the needs of the students coming in, we really want to have a very strong, supportive kindergarten experience for these little ones coming in. And by having a really strong, supportive kindergarten, hopefully as they mature, right, things will look better for them in 1st grade, 2nd grade, and they will be more successful. So that's where we are with kindergarten. Operations and maintenance, we've talked about that before in terms of the need to really separate transportation and operations. So our buildings are getting older. And the amount of time that Gabe is required to leave the transportation department and oversee operations and maintenance is only intensifying. There's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of preventative work that can be done, and he doesn't have time for any of that. In terms of transportation, what we've seen over the last couple of years is the increased need for our staff to review videos. And
Horrible job.
there's that, I cannot adequately describe, okay, the busyness of the transportation department. I have a radio that is a scanner, and it allows me to hear everything that's going on around the district, just in case there's an emergency. And I will keep that on. And the amount of traffic on that radio from transportation is shocking. There is so much. So we have the staff members who are just constantly on the phone. You have a student whose parents are supposed to be outside meeting them and they're not there. So while the bus driver is waiting, I have people in the office trying to call the family or trying to call emergency contact. Depending where the child lives, well, we have to keep driving and then turn around, and the amount of work behind the scenes. So we are thinking this position at this point, it's just not doable in the current structure. And that we really have to reevaluate it and look at separating the two. And we've talked about that. That shouldn't be news. So there's that. And then I guess there's a lot here that's special ed. So really look to Alicia to kind of talk about a lot of these special ed positions.
So, the additional speech pathologist position is really due to caseload sizes. Our speech pathologists are maxed out at 50 points of contact, so providing services and case managing combined at 50. And we have 2 pathologists that are constantly hovering and above 50 students. I know right now we have one that is above 50 students, and that pathologist will be receiving several incoming CDS kiddos next year, and will probably be well over 65 if we don't add an additional pathologist. It's also challenging. We did add a speech pathologist last year as well, but because of the high school, the middle school, and the travel time, it's just not doable for a pathologist to be at 3 different buildings. We've done that in the past, and it's just really time consuming, and they struggle to provide the services, especially with the different schedules in all of the buildings. So that additional position is really just to be within our state regulations.
But having an additional person would also decrease the amount of travel time, correct? That would there increase the amount of
Service time and face
service
time
time,
with
yeah.
students.
Okay.
And time to complete evaluations, necessary case management paperwork, all of those other responsibilities.
Does speech pathology go K to 12, pre-K to 12?
K-12.
It does.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if by the time students were in high school, they still needed.
I think you have fewer.
We have fewer. Most of the students, when they get into high school, they're shifted to consultation services, but we do have several students, mainly students within our life skills programs, that receive direct services still.
Thank you.
The IEP coordinator position, we haven't really talked about this too much. I did send you an updated job description of this, but this would really be a position to support our teachers, support with IEP overview coming into the central office, and really just to be consistent with regard to eligibility determinations across the district. So this position would essentially oversee all initial referrals and eligibility determinations and be the LEA representative at those meetings with regard to the determinations. Just because with 6 different buildings, Sarah and I obviously are not at all of these meetings, and things are just done differently from time to time because it's just the way it happens. So we're really hoping to be consistent with this position. They would help out with paperwork for those meetings, so it would take some off of our case managers' plates. Eligibility meetings are they're more time consuming, they're longer meetings. The IEP development is longer, the written notices take more time. So that would certainly, take something off of our teachers' plates. Also with the reviewing of IEPs right now, Brooks, fabulous administrative assistant, reviews all IEPs. Sarah reviews IEPs and I do the same. It's mainly Sarah and Brooks at this point, but that is very time consuming, and Sarah and Brooks are spending hours every day going over every single IEP, sending them back with questions. They come back, they have to ask questions again. So this position would also be able to do that, freeing up more time for Brooks to get back to what she has always been doing, and Sarah as well.
That was my question. My question was gonna be, that isn't what Brooks is there for. But
It's always been a really big part
sure,
of what Brooks does. However, with our audit and the Department of Ed really coming down on the way IEPs are written, nothing against the Department of Ed, it just never seems like anything we do is right. So what we're told, 3 years ago when we were going through the audit, we implement that. Within those 3 years, things changed. And then now we're getting kind of the red markings on, well, you shouldn't do it this way, you need to do it this way. So then we get to go back, change everything. So it's very time consuming.
And just to clarify, I think you're saying like some of the language that the DOE is expecting is, it needs to be pretty specific, and if it's off even just a little bit, all of a sudden it's like.
Very specific. The IEPs need to align. And so there are several sections, if you've ever seen an IEP, that really need to be specific and aligned to another section. And if they don't align, then we get to go back and start over. Yeah. It's a lot of work. Yeah.
Could you mention that one thing that is in the budget that we haven't eliminated is that software that will help with goal development?
Yes. Goal
that
book.
Hopefully, what is it called?
Goal book
Goal
toolkit.
book, right.
Yeah, it's a platform that we've just purchased this year for all of our special ed teachers, and next year our MTSS coordinators. Angela, what is MTSS leaders or the?
That's a lot of our interventionists.
Okay, we'll be able to use to write measurable targeted goals. The goal book toolkit really helps with like the progress monitoring. You can put in like a student's present level of functioning. It'll help create a goal in any area. So you have like your social work, your SEL, your executive functioning, any academics, all of those pieces. And it's kind of like click, click, click. Whatever the teacher is needing, they can input with a click. And then it will shoot out a goal that is DOE approved. Which will also save our teachers a lot of time in having to find and write their own measurable goals.
Yeah, and we've heard, I mean, we were just talking to the same person the other day who's a special ed teacher somewhere else who uses that software and said it's a game changer.
Yeah.
So for our teachers who have 22 students on their caseload, right? And trying to develop these measurable goals, and our audit, which was not glowing at all from the Department of Education, it will really put us in a better position to meet their expectations, and it should take some of the workload stress off of our teachers who are really feeling incredibly stressed right now with some of the day-to-day demands. So.
And knowing that with this position in mind is really to help support our teachers and take things off of their plate.
But it's an administrative position.
It is an administrative position. So in this, it is not budgeted as an administrative position because we hadn't spoke about that.
Then you also have in
school psychologist. So we currently have one school psychologist. The needs are growing. So our school psychologist right now, does all of the cognitive assessments, behavior rating scales, functional behavioral assessments, observations at time, and really is at capacity, can't do anything more. We also have a BCBA that we contract for 10 hours a week. To do a lot of FBAs. This person is also at capacity. And we just keep getting in more and more referrals for FBAs.
And an FBA is?
Functional behavioral assessment. So all of our students in like our life skills and in our autism program, really we want those FBAs, those functional behavioral assessments, to really know what the function of the behavior is and create a plan and really target those behaviors and collect data and then move forward. The other reason why we would do a lot of functional behavioral assessments is for disciplinary reasons. So we've had an increase of students being suspended. And if you are a special ed student, once you are suspended for 10 days, we have to go to a special IEP meeting called a manifestation determination meeting, where the behavior is discussed, and then we need to determine whether or not the behavior was caused by the student's disability. If the behavior was caused by the student's disability, we have to complete a functional behavioral assessment, and we are just seeing an increase. And there's just not enough hours in the day to do those evaluations without additional supports. With the increase in FBAs needing to have more support in completing them, we would also be looking for this position to take the achievement testing off of our case managers' plates. So right now, the one school psychologist we have is unable to do any of that achievement testing just because of the cognitive piece and the FBAs. But this position would also be able to do achievement testing in addition to FBAs. And in addition to that, provide counseling services to students. And that really, every school psychologist we've ever hired here and I've spoken to, they don't get into school psychology because they just want to assess all the time and write reports. They really want to provide those counseling services. So this position would not only help out with the social work piece and they'd be able to service students, but it would also help out with the evaluation piece and take another something off of our teachers' plates, because our special educators are fabulous, but they are truly struggling.
Is it a bad idea to jump past the FBA and just go straight? Can you do that? Can you?
No.
Do you ever do the FBA and find out they don't need it?
No.
That's why I'm asking. So
Yeah.
if you know they're gonna need it, why not just?
Well, the FBA gives us the information and the data we need to target what we need to.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But that's only if, say, with a disruptive student or a disciplinary issue, the disability of the child is the reason for the behavior, correct?
For that situation, yes.
How do we know the difference? Or how is it assessed whether it's because of a disability or just behavior of that child?
So we look at the pattern of the student behavior. We look at what the disability is. We look at behavior logs. We look at past evaluations. It's a long process in order to determine whether or not the disability is the reason for the behavior. And we always want to have our school psychologist at that meeting.
Thank you.
It can be challenging, very challenging at times.
Just trying to get there and save a buck. Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. I know that that's a lot. And we'll go back again and spend more time meeting with Alicia. She also down here more ed techs to provide some additional support for student needs.
Do you need to talk about that?
I don't think so. I think we all know what ed techs do and
And I know that the three that are in here, we brought back some students that were in out of district placements, which saves money, but these students also need additional support.
There was a position last fall that we transferred a vacancy to create a new special ed tech position, I think. What was the position we moved?
I think we used some of your ed techs to hire an additional speech pathologist. I think last year we added one on the run.
I think so, but I mean,
think it was the part-time.
well, I was thinking it was the high school behavioral position. We had to shift gears to get ed tech threes.
So these three ed
So we'll
tech,
have to go.
Yeah.
We had
I'm
so
just
many
trying to figure
shifts
out because
last
now we
year.
have a new speech pathologist. I thought we had shifted money out of a speech because it was unfilled to create the ed tech.
no, we had to
Okay.
create an additional speech
Okay.
position last year for
remembering
this
numbers.
year. And now we're back at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the numbers are growing.
And these three special ed techs are the ed techs that the board approved at one of its most recent meetings. So as a reminder, that's where that comes from.
But we do have some unfilled positions, so we're gonna have to go back and
Sure.
take a look at all of that. I
But
do wanna,
Is speech in person? I know we had remote.
It's all in person.
Right.
but if we can't hire someone,
it's
then
an
it has
option.
to be, but so far, knock on wood, we have real individuals in person.
Real people.
Real people. I wanna keep an eye on the time and respect,
Yes.
we're an hour and a half in. I do want Katie and Angela to be able to speak a little bit about their instructional supports. And Lauren, did you have your hand raised?
No, I was just gonna say, we are the behavior room position, I could speak on it if you wanted, and we have a few open ed tech and positions in our life skills that are unfilled.
We'll be trying to fill that position again, but maybe Katie, can you just speak briefly to the instructional support? Now, this position is with the assistant principal position. Remember, we added that a few years ago because now at Helen Thompson, we have both the STARS program and the STEPS program. So in the budget is a half-time AP, an assistant principal. The other half of her position is an instructional support position, and that was covered out of federal dollars.
So that looks like the person in the position facilitating, organizing, and providing real-time support for MTSS planning. So as we're working through tiers of support for students, Jen is able to respond to whatever those needs are. And that looks like anything from, I'm not really sure what this kiddo needs. I've tried A, B, and C. And then we're scheduling a meeting. So what that instructional support side of things looks like is scheduling the meetings, pulling the team together, starting to complete the paperwork and choose progress monitoring tools so that we can measure over time whether that intervention is a hit or a miss for students and then proceed accordingly. She's developing, or the person in that, I know it's so hard to not just say Mrs. House. But that position is also turning into dividing and conquering facilitation for IEP meetings. I know that falls under the administrative side, but so much of the work, Pat has asked us to really capture that, provide an outline of like that 50% on the administrative side and 50% on the instructional support. Had the conversation several times that like, would this be this side or this side? So much of it is both. So there's a lot of facilitation of meetings that has to happen in our building. We probably are at like 80-ish IEP meetings for the school year. The person in this position fills so many different roles, from facilitating, from sitting in as a classroom teacher, and from providing insight, because she deals with so many students over the course of every day of the week. She's responding in the moment when there's trouble in a classroom, and that might look like a kiddo doesn't have a tool that he or she needs, or teacher needs support for a number of different reasons. She's serving as a liaison between Spurwink and school-based social work, and sort of that like conduit to the classroom. Again, she is filling in so many different student-based needs that some days it feels like it's 100% administrative and 100% instructional support. Yes, I was actually gonna pull up the graphic, but I don't wanna be taking up too much time, mindful of the time, but we also meet for weekly PLC meetings, so professional learning community. It's a thing we talk about all the time. We are on a monthly rotation in our building, trying to focus on core practices in literacy 1 week, math 1 week, social emotional needs, MTSS planning, that 4th week. So on a rotation, this instructional support person is rolling up her sleeves and doing that work with grade level teams, with interventionists. We're really at an advantage this year because the person filling this role is trained as a coach, as an instructional coach. So she's been able to really tap opportunities for training, for getting to know the curriculum across kindergarten through fifth really quickly. And we're able to maximize her expertise. She's taking the lead in professional development, which has obviously it's administrative and has a natural ripple to the students directly impacting what their experiences are in the classroom. So in a quick nutshell, without going into the itemized list,
Awesome.
it's a vital position to the building, to the students, to the staff.
I'm sitting here listening, thinking, what does that feel like for this person to be responsible for so many things and having to apply so many bandages and coordinate so many things?
Well,
So,
and I think we're positioned to like flip that, right, and be
Right.
proactively
Yes.
planning and building
Yes.
capacity. But it definitely feels day to day right now, like it is exactly that, like we are like,
so that's
Yeah,
one person,
yeah.
but what you're just saying, that's what
There
they
you are.
do.
I know.
That's
And
what all of them are doing. You know, from the moment you arrive until the end of the day, or, you know, it doesn't matter, 8 o'clock at night, hey, you left and I needed to speak to you about a student. You know, that is the life of a building administrator these days. And I'm not exaggerating, I
No,
really,
and my-
that is truly what they do.
My concern,
Very
I don't
challenging.
worry about it, but my concern is that the general public, if you're not in school, doesn't know. Even if you have kids in school, you may not know what happens at school, and
Well, I think the other thing too is that a lot of the reason why we have kids in such need is because the parents don't want to know or don't have the capacity to deal with what they need to deal with these kiddos. And so, you know, you have teachers that are parents and social workers as well as educators as well.
maybe that's it, but I can't even address that, because that's a whole other, that's something else altogether, but we have what we have, and this is what we have to work with, so
So how do we support
how do we
our
support what we need to
students, our
support?
staff, our administrators to be able to do the work that needs to be
Right.
done? Okay, I know we're about done here, so I just wanted to give Angela, and Angela has already laid the groundwork on this topic with curriculum, so it may not require a lot, but just talking briefly about instructional coaches. And many of you have met with instructional coaches, you know the value in the work that they do.
Yeah, so we have lots of notes if you want any, and annual reports if you want to see any of those. So the coaching restarted here in 2018. And then we've grown coaching since then. They have adapted, so they're hired as instructional coaches. Each one of them has a specialty, literacy or math. They did adapt drastically during the pandemic to be full-on instruction, so classroom management, remote instruction, technology and integration specialists. They learned on the fly, and then they supported staff across the district. And now they're shifting back into really their content area. In literacy, we have someone who focuses on K2, one on 3-5, one on 6-8. We are about to launch on Friday a huge literacy initiative in 6 through 12, desperately needed. And we have some of that's been the work, not the coaches, but the work that is funded by the Maine Department of Education through a short-term grant. And the absence is there's no instructional coach at the high school. I've tried to extend our middle school coach a little bit to the high school. In the past, we've used our librarian to support some of that. Our librarian will support some writing instruction because of her background. But we're in some real need there, but that's not where the current ask is. What I'd like to do is look at the profiles coaches we have and see how we can further extend support with the literacy coaches we have, which includes one being transferred from ESSER to local funds. In math, we have one math coach. We moved her this year to the middle school, We have 2 grade levels that more than 70% of the kids are not proficient in. So she's working, this is not like teachers not working hard. I wanna be really clear about that. This is sort of a systemic change and challenges. And I will say, we've gotten so much better at our math instruction and research-based practices, and more importantly, how we check for understanding, that we've uncovered gaps that we maybe historically didn't recognize. And so because we've done that, now we have data that shows like where our true profile is, and we have some real work to do to ensure that by the time they leave high school, they are equipped to really use numeracy, math practices in their whatever world and pathway they take. We've made some changes in the graduation requirements to allow for greater flexibility for students to access different types of math that will fit their pathway better. But we're still going to need to support our teachers as they shift in their practices and meet these needs. So one math coach is currently working across 5 buildings, living out of the middle school and working with across 4 elementary schools 2 days a week when she can. And 3 days a week fully at the middle school. And we're not touching high school yet. Despite like one of those grade levels is about to rise up into high school. Our data is unchanged, and in fact, not positively progressing between 8th and 10th grade currently based on the screener we use. That doesn't mean they're not making progress. It doesn't mean they're not teaching. It just means based on the tool we use and that data point, I just feel like our teachers need support on the daily practices as they struggle with the planning and the differentiation, which is wider than we've ever seen before. And the intervention models, we're trying to implement some shift in our intervention system to meet kids in a more targeted and effective way. That has been done in the elementary schools. We are noticing growth now. That's very promising. We just started shifting in the middle school. We're noticing growth, and that's also very promising. And we'd like to see that happen in high school. Staff is positioned or are positioning themselves to do that work. But I worry about them doing it without the expertise beside them. They're very, they're very good at their knowledge base, but it's hard work to shift instructional to pedagogy side. And we have excellent people, and I just don't want to not just coaches, I mean staff. But I'm happy to answer any questions. I recognize that it's that we're facing a real challenge, trying to decide where to prioritize limited resources.
Can I piggyback on that real quick? Talking about the stress on principals and the day-to-day, I don't know how I could do it without the coaches. If I do an observation and I need some help, I can reach out to a coach. If we are looking at needing to change or support a grade level, I can reach out to a coach. If that fell completely on our shoulders, there would be other things that wouldn't get done. So I can't stress enough, in my opinion, how much coaches are valuable to help on that, just that piece.
And I will just add one more thing, Vicky, this made me think, we're finding it more and more difficult to attract and retain good teachers, right? We know that people are not going into the teaching profession, so they're harder to find. And so those coaches have been absolutely instrumental in helping grow some of our teachers. And if without them, I don't know where we would be in some circumstances, so,
And
yeah.
just to add to that, they definitely help in the new teachers, but the area that we're finding the most impact is those teachers that are in like 3, 10, 12, 15 years. Because that's where they're walking away, like nationally, everywhere, in the 3 to 7 year range, they're like, yeah, no, I'm not doing I don't know what I was thinking, and they changed careers, and we're, we're not, unique in that, and so having the coaching support has really been so great there. I will just also say, there's one of me, there's all the content areas and all the grade levels. And I can't keep making progress in science and social studies and PE and all these other areas if I don't have support in the literacy and math realm. Otherwise, it's me. I mean, we don't have enough dollars to keep hiring people from outside to come in. They're more expensive per hour to hire consultants. And so for me to keep making the forward momentum around the professional learning side, most of us special education side and other stuff, the intervention side and the content side. And you don't want to hire more me. Yeah, we're not that big of a district, but I do find that our work is a team.
So I hope that's helpful, right? Because we said that you wanted to hear more from administration, and we don't always have the ability to do so. So I hope hearing from them directly has provided some insights.
As we're talking about positions and things, I just want to remind those those board members who weren't here. The one thing that is not reflective in this budget is staff that may need to be picked up in the grants. So we don't have our allocations for Title I, we don't have our allocation for Title II, and we don't have our allocation for local entitlement currently. So we do not know whether in Title V, sorry. So we do not know whether our existing staff will fit within next year's grant allocation. As I have read, grant allocations do not seem to be increasing. So once we receive that allocation, there'll be additional conversations regarding.
I was just going to ask, since math in particular is such an issue, are we using any kind of software with monitoring metrics like Khan Academy or something along those lines to help students work on their own and try to improve?
I'd like to remind everyone that it was 4 years ago tomorrow that education ended as we know it. And we have been constantly since then trying to figure out what was going wrong before that, how to manage and provide what we've been entrusted and promised to do every day during then, and just the importance of not finding fault, not blaming, not saying public education is lost and rotten and bad, and to just support. We have to support because our kids need support, and it doesn't even matter. Our opinions don't matter. What matters is our kids and that they get exactly what it is they need. And anybody who was on this board 4 years ago today knows that that was a dark day. And sitting in this room with the administrators and deciding what we were going to do, and that there was no more school from then till the end of the year. Graduation in a parking lot happened that way all over the country and all over the state. Having the next full year of remote learning, and just the difference and the upheaval and whether anybody believes it was a good thing to do or not, it's done. It's there. It's back there. And we don't need to go back there, but part of growing is moving forward and letting go of bad things. And I want to support our staff. All this is to say, I support you, and I want us to support you with whatever we can to get you exactly what it is you need for our students, and to be positive throughout the community, because this is where we are regardless. So.
But it's balancing the struggle, what you
Absolutely.
hear of what our needs are.
Absolutely.
With the reality of where the budget is.
Correct.
You know,
And how do we get there?
Yeah.
And Angela, I agree with you. You just can't hire more, because more isn't necessarily better, but what might be better is to find ways with what we have to bring out safely for our staff, the courage to try and to work together. And I know you guys are doing that. And it's not always, it is about money, but it's also about being able to draw out of our staff what it is that makes them love what they chose to do and supporting them as they try and do that, or as they do that, not even try. So there's my pep talk for the night.
Also, thank you for your service.
Right, yeah, thank you for your service, absolutely.
So our next meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday at 5:30. The next full day that I have meeting with all of the administrators is the 20th, the next day. So I'm not sure how much work I'm gonna have done between now and next Tuesday to give you like all of these additional cuts. How do you feel about us not meeting next Tuesday and then coming back on the 26th? And you and I hadn't talked about that. How do you feel about that?
I am fine with that, even if we.
For a
meet-
4-hour meeting.
Well, hopefully not a 4-hour meeting.
I knew that would get a rise out of Jeff.
But I'll be able to give you,
Don't worry.
some movement.
Yes.
All right?
Yeah.
So that you can see where we're going, but it is going to result in you having to have some really difficult conversations about what you can support and what you can't support,
Yeah.
given what you're hearing from the administration, from the staff, and looking at the bottom line. And where do we go with that? This is not going to be administration just making all of these tough decisions. You're really gonna need to be making some really tough decisions and being a part of that solution. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be tough. So how about no meeting next Tuesday? Anyone upset about that?
Tears are flowing.
But I encourage you, finance committee members and just plain old board members, no, not that you're plain or old, but board members, look at this information. And if you still have your ED 279, look at your ED 279. Just a little, if you would, homework, just to give thoughts, because we need ideas and we're asking a lot.
And in terms of transparency, I would remind board members that Andrea has already provided a folder that has great detail, right? I mean, like pages and pages. So if you really want to dig in and see exactly the types of things that we're buying, I mean, I do that with the administrator, with Andrea, the administrators do it with their staff. So there are all of these layers, but that's available to you. So certainly I encourage you to go in and take a look at it.
So those folders are shared to you in Google Drive. I noticed the other day that one of the board members requested access to that folder from a private email address, meaning a non-MSAD11 address. You should not have to ask that for me. I've shared it to your MSAD11 email account. So as long as you're logged in using that, you have access to all the documents that I've provided from all of the meetings.
And as a reminder, all school board business has to be done with school board email. You cannot be using your personal email. So there should be no one requesting access to a Google document without
personal
using
Gmail
your
account.
district email.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Balloons, snacks? Thank you all for everything you do.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Tiffany?